Thanks everyone for joining us today for our second webinar in this series, Microsoft's Teams 101. Today's webinar will feature Brad Hunt. Brad currently serves as the VP of Business Development for Learnosity, an educational technology company focusing on assessment. Previously, Brad co-founded web development company where he worked for 22 years. Most of you might recognize Brad as he serves as the affiliate leader for NAMI Lubbock and is a board member for NAMI Texas. Brad is also a family support group facilitator and has been trained in family to family and NAMI Smarts. In today's webinar, Brad is going to cover an introduction to Microsoft Teams and the benefit of using this tool. So without further ado, Brad, I'm going to hand it over to you so that we can go ahead and get started.
Sounds good. Thank you, Grace, for the introduction. Nice to see some familiar faces on the call. And I'm going to share my screen. We're going to, as Grace said, today have an introduction to Teams and have a few slides to share. And then also we'll do some interactive demonstration with Grace and myself on Teams. And then hopefully we'll kind of get your appetite or your imagination flowing for how you can even use Teams in your own environment. But just maybe a quick check, you guys can see my screen, right? See the slide that says Teams 101, awesome. All right, so let's take a look at the agenda for today. Actually, before we start the agenda, let me just do a quick housekeeping item. If you've got questions, I think there'll be time at the end. You can also put questions in the chat as we go. And Grace is putting that in there as well. So if you drop the question in the chat, we'll answer those at the end. Or Grace, maybe Grace, if you can keep an eye on those questions, and if something comes up where I've just said something that's totally confusing somebody, I need to stop and address that, immediately I will. But otherwise, we'll have some time at the end for questions. And I'm not a Teams expert, so anything that I can't answer, we can always try to take offline and follow up. So with that sort of housekeeping out of the way, we are going to talk about what is Microsoft Teams, just what is the application, the software itself. Why are we even taking time to learn about Microsoft Teams? Why did NAMI Texas organize this event? Why is it important to NAMI Texas? Talk about ways to install or use Microsoft Teams. And if you're somebody that already has used Teams before, maybe used Teams at work, and you know all these three bullet points, then you can multitask or something for a bit. But when we get to this next step, it's actually being invited to a team, and lowercase t there, meaning we're not talking about the application Microsoft Teams. We're talking about being invited to participate on a team with people from NAMI Texas and other affiliates. So we'll talk about that. Then we will look at how you can actually use Teams. So once you've got it installed, you've been invited to a team, how are you going to use Teams to interact with NAMI Texas staff members and one another? Also, then finally, I think we will look at how to use Microsoft Teams in your own affiliate. We're not going to go too deep into this topic, but since we will have talked about Teams and the benefits of Teams, I just wanted to touch on the fact that you could also implement Teams yourselves in your own affiliate at no charge. And that's what we've done in Lubbock. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So first thing is just, what is Microsoft Teams? And ultimately, Microsoft Teams is a communication tool. So what you see here on the slide is a screenshot of Microsoft Teams as it's installed, in this case on my computer. I'm using a Mac, but it doesn't matter which kind of computer you have. And this is a screenshot of some interaction you see there with Greg and Grace and NAMI Texas of Palestine interacting in a chat. So ultimately, Microsoft Teams is a communication tool. And if you've used other tools like this, you may have heard something like Slack is another very popular communication tool. But Microsoft Teams is relatively new to the market, but it's taken over a lot of the market share, especially during COVID. And again, what's great about it for nonprofits is you can use it at no charge. So things that you can do with Teams, you can chat individually with somebody one-on-one. And so if you need to reach out to a staff member or to another affiliate leader, you can do that through Teams. You can also chat with a group. And that's what we see here in this screenshot in the context of a team and a channel. And we'll talk about what that means in a little bit. You see some interaction again between Grace and Greg and some other affiliates. So you have the ability to share information with groups of people. You can also share files, and we'll talk about that in a little bit and how NAMI Texas intends to share information with affiliates using the file sharing technology. You can make video calls. I don't think we'll demo that today on this call since we're using video over Zoom, but the idea is you can make video calls individually for a meeting, and you can also have team video calls. So we could have held this meeting instead of Zoom. We could have done that via Teams, and maybe in the future we might do that. And I know, again, my example in Lubbock, we've adopted Teams. And so when we've been doing our leadership team meetings every month, we've been doing those over Teams. And so that's really handy and an easy way to do that. And then at the moment, NAMI Texas isn't using a bunch of these other apps, but there are other apps that you can use inside of Teams, things like whiteboards or things like polling features where you can ask questions of your team. And those may be things that are used in the future. So why are we learning about Teams? It may be a little obvious from some of those items we just discussed, but the first one really is better communication with the NAMI Texas staff. I think we all know what a great job the staff does. As a small staff, they are burdened with a lot of things. Grace and I were just talking about all the things that are on her agenda this week. And they do a lot and they wear a lot of hats. So having better communication with the staff and easier communication. So Teams is great for quick questions. Grace and I have used Teams in this manner already this week and previous. Just jump on there and ask a quick question, get a quick answer. You don't have to stop and schedule a phone call or schedule a calendar meeting and add Zoom and all that kind of stuff. You could just jump on Teams. Hey, Grace, tell me what you know about XYZ, and she can help you. Also in Teams, you have a history of prior communication. So if a week later I forgot what Grace told me, I can jump back into Teams and I can see that history and see the question I asked and the answer that she gave. So that's really helpful. And also with group chats, you can see the group history as well. So when a new person's added, typically they can see the whole history and see what's gone on before. The next item is document repository. And so the idea is that it's a central place for NAMI Texas to put files. And as we'll look at in a minute, Greg and other staff members, a ton of good content out there for you as affiliates to use. You can not only chat with NAMI Texas staff, but you can also chat with other affiliates. And the dependency there is this: they need to be logged into Teams for them to see your chat and to respond. But the idea is that you can ask questions of other, like maybe you're a Model B and you want to ask another Model B leader a question about how Model Bs operate, or want to ask somebody tips and tricks for how to have a walk, something like that. You can ask other affiliates. And as I just said, share relevant information. So we still use email a lot, and that's still an okay way to share relevant information, but Teams is a great way to have the history and to share that with the wide group. And it's a good way to continue team and relationship building, especially since we're all remote and none of us are ever in the same place at the same time. Grace talked about how already within the NAMI Texas staff, Teams has been a great way to build relationships with each other, have video calls, have video chats, and get some FaceTime with each other. And ultimately, the goal is for all of us to have stronger affiliates, whether we're Model A, Model B, whatever it may be. So those are the reasons that we're taking time to really talk and learn about Teams. So next thing, excuse me, I want to look at is actually how to install Teams. Where do you get it? How do you find it? How do you start using it? And there are different ways to do that. So the first way is to actually install the software on your computer. And this will work on a Mac or a Windows. It doesn't matter. And the easiest way that I found to do that is to just basically go to Google. And so however you use Google, you can just search for like download Microsoft Teams. And you could even say download Microsoft Teams. You can see here like for Mac or for Windows. And then you'll be taken to a download. Typically it's going to be the first one. Sometimes you might see an ad, but typically you'll be taken to a download screen, download site. And then you can see here, it already knows, the website already knows that I'm accessing this site from a Mac. And so it's giving me the Mac, the Apple logo, and I can download Teams. If you do the same thing on a Windows machine, then you may see a different icon, or you may just get the Windows version. But basically, whether you're on Mac or Windows, again, the easiest way is just to Google that, download Microsoft Teams, and you'll be taken to the download site. From there, I assume that you guys mostly will know how to download software, but basically you're downloading that to some local place on your computer. In other words, you're downloading it from a website to your local drive. And then once that's downloaded, typically all you need to do is double click that application to install it. And we'll talk about the sign-in procedure in just a minute. So that's the first way. The first way is just to Google, download Microsoft Teams, pick your operating system, Windows or Mac, and install it. The next way that we can use Teams, looks like I lost my place in my slides, is on your phone. And so I don't have a way to share my phone with you via screen share. So I'm going to share that just by going to the app stores in my browser. So on your phone, whether that's an Android or an iOS device, you can go to your relevant app store. And again, just search for Microsoft Teams. This is what the logo looks like. And you would be able to download that. It's a free application, don't have to pay for it. And again, it's there present on Apple App Store and also Google Play Store, same icon. So whatever phone you have, you can download that. I do have a screenshot here in the slide that shows it on your phone. So it's going to look very similar to desktop. It's just going to sort of be stacked and be a smaller form factor, if you will. The last way to use Teams is you can actually use it in a web browser. You don't even have to install anything on your computer. And so for that, I've got this address or the URL there. So we can just go to teams.microsoft.com. And when you do that, you're going to get that same Teams experience, except for instead of being an installed application, it's installed in a web browser. And see if the demo gremlins get me here, see if this works for us. If not, I'll log out and log back in. Typically, all you have to do is go to teams.microsoft.com and you'll see that same interface that you would see. That's okay. Sometimes with technology, the demo gremlins get you, and I'll come back and look at that in just a minute. But one advantage of the Teams in a web browser is that you don't have to install anything. So maybe if you're at the office or you have a different computer that you're not allowed to install software on, you can use Microsoft Teams in the web browser. So let me do one other thing here. Let me start a new browser and go to teams.microsoft.com. And we'll go through this process in just a minute, but you can log in. I'll go ahead and show you that now. And bear with me for just a moment. Again, sometimes the demo gremlins get you in the middle of a presentation. But I've got to go capture my long password out of there, sign in. And then hopefully we will see Teams in a web browser. Okay, there we go. Sorry that took a minute. Thanks for your patience. But we see that same application now running in a web browser. We had to jump through a couple of hoops there that I'll explain in just a minute. But now we've got that running in a web browser. So again, the ways that you can do that are install it on your computer, install it on your phone, or use it in a web browser. So let's jump back to our slides here. So the next thing is, once you've got that installed on your computer, how do you actually start participating? You saw that I was involved maybe in a team there, an affiliate leaders team. How do I get connected with NAMI Texas as an affiliate leader? So the first thing you need to do is provide your email. And I guess depending on the context, that might be to Grace or it might be to another staff member, but you provide the email that you're going to use for communications on Teams. The next thing that you will do is receive an invite via email. And it looks like this image here at the right. And it's going to come from Microsoft Teams, and the subject line is going to tell you that you've been added as a guest to NAMI Texas in Microsoft Teams. One thing we've noted is that sometimes those emails end up in your spam folder. So make sure to check your spam folder and look for that and move it back to your inbox. But once you get that email invite, you're going to see a button here that says Open Microsoft Teams. And this is assuming you've already got Microsoft Teams installed, as I just showed you. So once you click on Open Microsoft Teams, then you'll be forced to sign in. You actually saw me do this real time just a minute ago. So whether you're using the browser, whether you're using the application on your phone or installed on your desktop, you're always going to have to sign in with what that account is. The first time that you sign in, you'll probably have to accept some permissions. And so this is basically Microsoft saying that that NAMI Texas Teams application is going to be able to access these things, your profile data and some other activity. And basically there's not a way around this. If you want to participate in Teams, you just need to accept this. I should also pause at this time and say that the information that I'm sharing in this presentation will provide a copy of this presentation deck with the screenshots and notes and everything, so you don't necessarily have to capture a bunch of notes, and I apologize for not saying that earlier. So back to our flow. Once you've signed in and once you've approved permissions, then you will see the application. And this is what the application looks like. Again, you saw this briefly in a web browser, but whether it's a web browser, your phone, or your desktop, you're going to see something like this. So let's talk a little bit now to go back to the reasons and the things that Teams does. Let's talk about how you're going to use this to work with NAMI Texas, and then I'll actually share my screen again, and we'll show you some examples of this in real time. So again, we're going to use this to communicate with staff members, to chat one-on-one, to chat with a group, to share files, and in some cases, make video calls. So I am logged in locally to Teams. And I'm going to drag this over so you guys can see it. Bear with me just a moment. Got two monitors and lots of windows open. Okay, so hopefully now you can see the Teams interface. Mary or Liz, I can see you guys. Do you see that okay? Okay. So this is what Teams looks like. I am using a Mac again, and I've got this installed on my computer. So this is the one I downloaded. I double-clicked, I installed it. And so one thing to note is that depending on how you're using the application, you may see slight differences. So if you're on a Mac, it may look a little different than Windows. If you're using it in the web browser, it may look a little different. Some cases you might not have entirely the same functionality in the web versus the installed application, but that will sort of come with experience and playing with the different platforms. But in terms of just getting files and chatting with staff, that certainly is available through any of those platforms. So down the left-hand side, we see some icons for chat, Teams, files. And so earlier when I said that you received that email and you were invited to a team, that's what this means. So Teams is called Teams because the concept is that the administrator of this application can create various teams. And so there's a team created for Texas Affiliate Leaders Team. And inside that team are what they call channels. And a channel is just an area for communication. So here is a general channel. And as it sounds like, that's usually the place where you post general information that might be applicable to everyone else on the channel. And then these are not always the case on a team. These are just the channels that NAMI Texas has elected to create. So there's a channel here about board, there's a channel about communications, there's one down here in self-care, and I posted in this a couple of days ago just saying testing the self-care channel. So the idea is that you would select the appropriate channel. So maybe you're looking for fundraising tips. And once there's conversations here, you would see the history of those just like I do in the general channel. But since nobody's posted in fundraising, I come in here and start a new conversation. And I could say, does anyone have a tip for first time NAMI fundraising walk? And so that would show up to everybody who is subscribed to that team and who's looking at that channel. And you'd be able to reply to that message and give me some tips and tricks on how, what I might do for the fundraising walk. So the general idea here is that each of these channels is specific. And if you want to start a new channel, depending on how this has been set up by NAMI Texas, sometimes the participants can start their own channels, or sometimes NAMI Texas would have to start those. My initial recommendation would be to let NAMI Texas manage that so it doesn't get too hectic with too many channels. But again, just to sort of remind you of that terminology, this is a team, and this is what you were invited to or will be invited to with the email. When you click the link, you'll be a part of that team, and the team has various channels. And then if you want to communicate with people on that channel, then you go onto that channel and create a post. You can also do things what are called mentions. So if I hit the @ symbol, and this is very similar to Twitter or Facebook or other platforms, you are mentioning somebody. So you'll start to see the names of people. So let's say maybe I want to mention Grace. Hey, outreach coordinator, do you have any tips for me? So I can post there. You can also interact with various little icons. You can also edit your message. Maybe if you misspelled something, you can delete it. So you've got various options to edit your messages. But this is called a mention when you mention somebody. You can also mention other people. Like I have a different account on here that's under my affiliate leader, so I could mention other people. If you don't know who's on the channel or who's on the team, the 3 little dots up here allow you to come up, and I think everybody should see manage team, and you'll be able to see who are the owners, so the owners can manage the team and do whatever they need to on the team. And then here's all the members. So if you want to know, hey, is my friend Angela Horner on this team? Yes, she is, and I can see her email and I can see her status currently. So this is the concept again of teams, posting or communicating, chatting in the channel with the team. And I gave you an example of how you might mention somebody on a team post. The other thing that we can do is chat. So you've got a history here of recent chats, and you can see as early as today, I was chatting with Grace. So I can chat with Grace and say, hey, Grace, how is the call going so far? And she can give me a response there. She can give me a thumbs up, whatever she's going to give me. So we can chat real time back and forth and communicate with one another that way. Also, I don't have, let's say maybe I don't have a chat history with Greg, the executive director. So I could come up here and start typing executive director, or I could maybe type Greg. It just depends on how he's in the catalog. So here's Greg, and I could resume a message that I've had with Greg in the past. So hopefully that makes sense. If you've used any other kind of instant messaging or chat features before, even in Zoom, you're just selecting the person with whom you'd like to chat, and you're naming them and starting a chat with them. Also, as I mentioned, you can do video calls or audio calls straight from Teams. So if I wanted to have a quick video call with Grace or a quick audio call, I might just ask her, hey, Grace, are you free for a quick audio call or video call? And she might say, hey, yeah, let me put on my headset, or let me grab my headphones, or give me a minute. So it's a good idea to sort of ask ahead of time. You can also screen share. So this is kind of a neat feature, just like I'm doing in Zoom, where I'm screen sharing my screen with you real time. You can share your screen with Grace. So maybe Grace or somebody else is helping you, say, with NAMI 360 or NAMI 720, and you have a question about that. You could share your screen, and you could either do that as part of a video call, or you could just share your screen and chat back and forth. So the final thing that really we want to focus on today is file sharing. We talked about that a little bit. So Teams allows you to upload and manage files and share those with other people. And there's a couple different ways to find files. But as I go through these different channels, you may notice that at the top of the screen, there's a couple of links as well. And one of those says files. There's also a files link down here at the left. And ultimately, this is surfacing all the same files. It's just sort of a different view, like a different window into different groups of files. So when I click on files here, it's sort of just laundry list of a whole bunch of things that don't make a lot of sense in context. And so the way that NAMI Texas has set this up is it's easier if you just go to files at the top, and then here you'll see the files that are part of the general channel. And in fact, I've already uploaded this PDF version of this presentation. So maybe that's a great homework assignment for people, is to, of course, you might need the PDF to get to it, so we can email this out as well. Like I uploaded this PDF for people to see. Here is something Greg uploaded on Uvalde back in July. And the idea is that if you go through each of these different channels, you can see the files. So Greg has already uploaded a whole bunch of documentation that's relevant to boards. So there's stuff here about how to build a good board, how to organize your committees, how to have your, I guess, your board of dreams, how to deal with if you have a bad apple on your board. So lots of good content here. And I might ask, I don't think Greg's on the call, but I might ask Grace in a minute if she's got any insight into all the just documents that have been uploaded. But again, for any of these, you can go to the Files tab and you can see the information that's been shared. And if I go back to Files here, or actually, sorry, let me go back to General and Files. From here, I can go back to the main documents level and I can see all the files actually organized in a folder structure. So hopefully that's not too confusing. But the idea is that we've got an individual folder full of files and those folders sort of mapped one-to-one to each channel. So if you want to know something like, are there any documents posted about finances? Let me go into that finances channel or drill into the finances folder, and here's all the various information about finances. So hopefully that makes sense, and we can come back and answer any questions that you may have there. Let's kind of review where we are. We have been invited to a team. We have clicked our invite. We've gone through and installed the software. The next thing I want to do is provide you a few tips to consider as you're working in the system. One is to respect the status icon and the messages. So what I mean by that is I took a few screenshots over the past few days of people and their statuses. So to demonstrate that first, let me go back to Teams and show you that if I go to Grace and I mouse over Grace's picture here, I get this little expanded card that tells me that she is currently busy. And I also see some contact information for her as well. So if I mouse over somebody and I see that they're green with the check mark, that means they are available for chat and it's fine to reach out and ask that person a question. If you see the little icon that looks more like a little clock and it's yellow, it means that person is away. And in this case, you can see at the time that I took this screenshot, Greg had been away for 44 minutes. So probably in terms of etiquette, it would be fine for me to reach out to Greg and just say, hey, you know, when you're back, do you have a minute to chat? Some other examples, if it's red, that means that person's in a meeting or in a call. And so again, a best practice might be to sort of maybe avoid disrupting that person if they're in a meeting if possible. If they're on do not disturb, what that means is they won't actually even see the messages that you're sending to them until they finish. So like if maybe they're doing a presentation and they're doing a screen share, then they wouldn't receive your messages until they finish that. And then the last example here is just this hollow dot. This is one I took over the weekend and Greg hadn't been online since, you know, the previous end of the day Friday, for example. So, you know, that just means he's not online. So people will see those messages whenever they log back in though. So it's okay to still message them. And the other thing is that you can also set your settings in Teams. And so if I come up to the three dots in Teams and I go to settings, I can choose various things about the theme and so on, but I can also set notifications. So if I'm not logged into Teams or if I miss a message that somebody sent me, you can choose whether or not the system will send you an email to let you know that you missed a message, for example. So I won't go into all these various settings, but how you get to the settings is that three dots, at least on a Mac, and you can set various things about your application and how it's working. All right, so back to the slides here. So that was the first tip, is to make sure to look at the status and sort of respect that if people are busy. The second thing is number two, if you use Teams for another organization, like a job or just even a personal organization, you might have some extra visual cues, and you already saw that a little bit inadvertently when I logged in. So if you've got multiple accounts that are all registered in various teams, like I do here, I've got a personal account, I've got a work account, then you may have to choose which of those accounts you want to use to log into Teams. And you would choose the one that had been invited to participate in the Texas team, NAMI Texas Affiliate Leaders team, because if you choose a different account that hasn't been invited, you won't see that content. And then also a screen you guys saw briefly when I logged in is I use Teams not only for my personal organization called Brad Hunt, but my same user was invited to NAMI Texas as a guest, and you can see that here. So this is only going to be relevant to you if you happen to use Teams again for other organizations or happen to use it in a different way. You might be prompted to indicate which organization you want to log into. Hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory. Next is number 3 here. Communications are often quick, but not always can be asynchronous. So what I mean by that is chat is designed to be sort of a synchronous tool back and forth, but it's also common that somebody's going to have the application open and they're going to be doing other things and they may not be able to respond to you immediately. And that kind of goes back to looking at that status message. So if you see that Grace has a solid red dot and she's busy with something, it's okay to go ahead and maybe ask a question and she'll see that when she can get to it. But just know it may not be immediate. It may take some time for somebody to get back to you, and that's okay. I said this earlier, but it's a good idea, good etiquette to maybe use chat before starting a video call or an audio call. Just give that person a heads up and say, hey, Grace or Greg or whoever, is it okay if I start a video call? Just wanted to chat with you. And they may say no, they just want to do an audio call or just want to do chat. When it comes to files in the file structure, the folders that I showed you earlier, my recommendation is don't delete any files. Now, I don't know if Grace or Greg has set up any permissions. That can be done and something we probably want to look at, but a good practice would be for folks not to delete files. But if you've got files you want to contribute, that's fine. Just make sure to kind of keep them organized and put them in the folder that makes sense. Now I put an item 6 here, so I'm going to kind of put Grace on the spot. I don't know if any other staff members are here, but I would ask Grace or anybody else, do you have any best practices or tips that you would like people to follow, especially when interacting with you or other staff members?
No, I feel like you touched on all of the tips or input that I would give. I like that what you said, even if our status is on red, you don't need to hesitate to ping us. It's just that we might not get back immediately, but you can ping us at all hours. We just might it might be a delay before we can get back to you, depending on what projects we have that day.
Great, thank you. And while you have the floor, Grace, do you have any input or additional information from Greg or you about types of files that have already been added? Are there some key things that affiliate leaders should go ahead and dig into? Any content recommendations you would make at this time? Or do you recommend folks just sort of explore?
Yeah, well, I definitely recommend that folks go in and explore a lot of those files. So it's very different information than you're going to get from NAMI 360 help files. I can't remember the name off the top of my head that NAMI 360 uses. They're resource files, but the files in Teams were downloaded and uploaded from this leadership portal that Greg used to be a member of. And so all of these different files in here are going to be from that site that he used to use before he deleted his account. He went in and downloaded all of these masterclass. Some of them are videos and webinars, and some of them are just articles. So yeah, I just definitely encourage you to go in and explore, because it's going to be different content that you've received if you've only been exploring on the NAMI 360 resource tabs.
Because what you're saying, right, is that this is not necessarily even NAMI branded content. It might be like Donald Miller is well known sort of in the business space for his leadership and sort of thought leadership. So these are all things that are more just general training on leadership and organizational skills and things like that, right?
Correct. Yeah. With a focus on nonprofit. Yeah.
Great. And any of these that you want to open, I didn't actually show you that, but let's say you want to view this Donald Miller presentation. You can click on that and you can click download and download it to your computer. You've also got this 3 dots, gives you some other menus here. You can download it, you can click on it, and you can actually open it in the context of Teams and just read it. Story brand is the thing that Donald Miller does and is very popular for. So just a lot of good content that would be good organizational leadership kind of training stuff. So yeah, thank you for that, Grace. And again, just a reminder not to delete things. If you do delete them, they end up in a recycle bin, I think temporarily, but it's a good practice not to delete them. So just a couple of other things, and as we said on number 7 there, feel free to explore. Now this is a little bit of a sort of a bonus content, I guess you'd say, because this slide is not necessary at all for you to do any of the things that we've talked about today. So this is completely optional, completely something you could consider for your local affiliate, but not a necessity. So if you would like to make use of Teams within your own affiliate, again, whether it's Model A or Model B, you can go and request free Microsoft Office 365 licenses. Microsoft Office 365 is the name of the suite of Office tools that Microsoft has. And you do that by using an intermediary organization called TechSoup. And some of you may know about TechSoup, but TechSoup is sort of a clearinghouse that matches nonprofits with technology. And so if you go to TechSoup.org and create an account, it's a pretty easy process. You fill out a form, you need to provide your, I think it's your annual operating budget number for them. I think you have to have the EIN number from NAMI, Texas. Now, if you're a Model A and you're not operating under NAMI, Texas, you just use your own information. But like Lubbock is a Model B, so I got the tax number from Greg and then put that in. And once I've created an account, what happens is somebody from TechSoup goes and they validate your organization to make sure you're legitimate. They'll look you up in their database, and that may take a few days. And then once you're validated, you have the option to request free software. And it's not just Microsoft Office. There are other things on there that you can request for free as well. But in this case, I chose Microsoft Office, and I think we got like 10 different licenses or 10 different accounts. And so I was able to set up emails that were like leader@namilubbock.org, finances@namilubbock.org, volunteer@namilubbock.org. And then our team can use Teams, and we can share files, and we can do that internally, organize a walk that we're having, whatever it may be. Now, other affiliates use other things like Google Drive or whatever, and that's fine too. This is sort of an option. But again, this is not mandatory at all, but it's something you can do within your organization if you want to sort of adopt Teams internally as well. That's the end of my content. I'd be happy to try to take some questions, but I also wanted to leave my NAMI Lubbock email there. This is the one I check. And so if anybody has questions after this, or if you want me to help you with TechSoup, or if you want to jump on a screen share and say, help me with something with Teams, I'm happy to do that. But we're only at about 38 minutes here, so we've got some time for questions if anybody has them. Or maybe if they've already been put in the chat. Grace, do you know?
Yeah, we've got a few comments and questions in the chat, so I can start with those, and then it's possible that some people might just want to come off mute and ask their questions that way. But I'll start with the questions in the chat. The first one is, can everyone see the chat that takes place between two people?
No, if it's an individual chat between you and another person, that's private. Now, it's probably not a place to put things like HIPAA information or things like that, because ultimately the site administrator could probably have access to that, but it's a fairly secure communication channel, like between two people. So if you did need to ask a question about, a mental health diagnosis or something, maybe that's not the appropriate place, but otherwise it's a private one-to-one correspondence, as long as you've gone into the area to chat one-on-one with the person, like I was showing, like with Grace in this case. Nobody else should be able to see those chats except me and Grace.
Right, yeah. And then another question was, this is another way to hold a meeting, training, class. Is this another way to hold a meeting, training, or class besides Zoom? And if so, is there a time limit? Can I hold a 2-hour training without needing to purchase a membership?
Yes, as long as you have, as I described, the process of going through and setting up teams in your own organization, then yes, you can create meetings amongst your leadership team. You can have trainings that way. You can do family support group that way. Now, one that's a little different is, since this is not designed like Zoom, where Zoom, sometimes you might have a form that somebody has to fill out to gain access to that meeting. This is more like a meeting you would set up and put on the calendar, and then you would share that link with people. So that was a little bit outside of the context of what I prepared, but I can show you that quickly if you'll bear with me for one moment, just since that question was asked, and I think we have time. So again, I have Teams. Sorry, I have Office 365 for NAMI Lubbock. And so I'll come to the calendar, and you can see I actually have a calendared item tomorrow for NAMI to visit with somebody. But if I wanted to create a new meeting, I could come in here and say, this is my NAMI informational meeting. And if I click on more options, then I can enable Teams. And when I click on Teams, that will automatically add, you don't see it on the screen, but it'll add the Teams invite to the body of that. So let's say I wanted to add myself, I've got a personal email here. So now that's going to send me an email whenever I hit send. That's going to create a calendar invite from 4:30 to 5:30 with my Teams information. So everybody that you add to that invite will receive the link to Teams, and then they'll be able to join that. Does that make sense? And that works in the same way as we've described the other things broadly.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure who
So
asked that question.
So yeah, Michelle Mott asked that question. So it sounds like it wouldn't be as formal as or as secure even as Zoom. So in terms of support groups, it probably wouldn't be the best feature just because with support groups, there's the registration process and whatnot. But this is really good for, I don't want to say informal meetings, they could be formal meetings too, but for in terms of certain classes through NAMI with fidelity issues, Teams probably wouldn't be the best fit.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I said family support group, but maybe that's a bad example to your point, because you don't have that form, which, and I know in our case in Lubbock, asked, do you agree to confidentiality? And it has some other questions that you wouldn't get. But yeah, certainly any kind of meetings, one-on-ones with volunteers, leadership meetings amongst your own staff, anything like that, Teams is great for.
Yeah, and not to say you couldn't be doing a training. In a way, this is a training to some extent. So
Sure.
just in terms of if it's very NAMI specific with support groups, and I'm sure there's ways around it too. Maybe you create your own registration link with a Google form or something outside of Teams. And just know that Zoom makes it very easy because it's got the registration included in it. But there's probably ways to still honor fidelity with using Teams. So that's definitely an option, Michelle.
And Teams, you can configure the options for meetings as well. So you can configure a waiting room, and you can admit people, or I think they call it a lobby. You can admit people from the lobby. But you still don't have that form up front.
Right.
It's a good question.
And then we've got a comment from Becca, who's the operations manager for NAMI Texas. And she just said she wanted to quickly chime in that for more important matters that require a paper trail and include external context outside of NAMI, she recommends keeping that in Outlook emails just for easier access. The Teams chat is more for sharing quick information and chat internally. So if it's a very important document or form of communication, she just recommends having that via email. And I know Greg prefers that too. If we send PTO or time off, he prefers that within to send it via email just so that he can have it easier access that way. So.
And I think one of the things you'll find as you start to use this, you'll sort of determine some best practices along the way based on how people are using it. And you may start to guide people's usage, because every organization will be a little different what they adopt and what they allow. So that's great feedback. And see, Angela has her hand raised. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, sorry I'm late, but I think I heard enough, and hopefully I apologize if you've already explained this and I wasn't here.
Sure.
So my biggest question, I guess, to help me understand how this works is when we first got our NAMI domain and our NAMI GCC email account, I think we reached out to TechSoup or somebody, and they told us you have two options. You can go with Google or G Suite, as it was called back then, or you can do Microsoft Office. And I don't remember why, probably because I had a personal Gmail account and I knew how to use Gmail more than I knew how to use Outlook. So our affiliate, we went with Google. So we're currently doing Google, and I know Google has a lot of these similar things available, like I don't know, I guess has similar function. But this sounds really cool. I love the like chat. I guess it's kind of like what Andrew calls office communicator or OC or like instant message or direct message. I don't even know what format that is. I see you smile, Brad. That's probably old school.
Well, yeah, Microsoft has changed the name of these tools multiple times over the years. So that's why I'm laughing, because it has had different names. And Teams, you might have heard of, I don't even know if I can remember the former names, Link or Link for Business. It had various themes, but as of a couple of years ago, Teams is the official sort of name, and they put everything together in one package, which is the stuff we looked at: chat and video calls and screen sharing and file sharing.
So I like did a little research. I thought Teams was just like a meeting platform. I didn't realize you could do all this other thing like file sharing and chat and everything. And so I guess I'm wondering, is this something that our affiliate wants to start using, figure out how to use? I've gotten emails saying that I was mentioned in a Teams something, but I have no idea how to access it. I have no idea how to do it.
So let me take the second question first. And I talked about this briefly already, but it may not have been clear, or you may have missed it, which is fine because it's a good example. And we are recording this, so if you want to go back and watch that when it's done. So let's see if I've got, for example, if I go to Teams and I go to General and I start a conversation and I come in here and mention you. I think this is you at NAMI GCC, right? I say, hi there, glad you made it to the meeting today. So you're not online right now, I don't think, on Teams. And so you show to me to be off. Yeah, right. So you show to be offline. So what that's going to do is it's going to send an email to that person and say, you were mentioned in this chat. And so for you to be able to see that, you're going to have to accept the invite, which again, as there's will be part of this recording. That's part of the earlier slides I did. You can look back and look at that invite, or Grace can re-invite you if you can't find that invite email. But once you've joined, you can join even with this NAMI GCC email. Even if you're doing Google with NAMI GCC, it doesn't matter. You can still join this team. You can still participate in Teams. But that's why you got the emails, because you were mentioned. Like just now, I mentioned you. So it'll start a new email to you that you'll get later. And the frequency of those emails, you can choose. So like in this case, if I come into settings and I go to notifications, I can choose to get the missed activity emails, as soon as possible, once a day, turn them off, whatever you want. And you can also set this, like if it's all activity or just mentions or just replies. So you've got a way to configure that. So the first part of your question, though, about G Suite, ironically enough, once I chose to give this presentation, I changed jobs, and we don't use Teams in my new job. So at my new job, we use all Google, we use all G Suite, and we use Slack. So if you've heard of Slack, Slack is another communication tool that is very similar to Teams. It does many of the things we just looked at.
Do you know how to do Slack?
Yeah, you can. So Slack, I don't know if Slack is free for nonprofits. I
have to learn how to do that because the Coles grant that NAMI National is doing, that's how they communicate. So I don't know how to do Slack, but I got to figure that out. So
Slack, I realize this is recorded, so I'll try not to share anything sort of too work personal here, but this is Slack is very similar to Teams. You got channels, you got mentions, you got people, you can do direct messages, etc. However, with Google, with G Suite, a little beyond the scope of our call today, but you can do many of the things that you can do with Microsoft Office, right? So you can share documents, you can chat, you can have a document repository, you can create email accounts, you can see each other's calendars. So it's just Microsoft Teams kind of brings all that together under one umbrella with the Office 365 tools, whereas Google is just a sort of separate suite of competing tools. So my suggestion to you would be, if you've adopted that and you've already got that set up, would be don't change. Just learn how to work.
Part of Google that we're using is the email. I've tried to get the people to set up their calendars. I did all that. And I think that our volunteers don't really know how to. And so maybe we need to really get down to the basics and teach everyone how to do that. And then as far as
maybe we need a session on, maybe we need a training session on G Suite. Yeah.
Well, and then you have like the Google Forms and all that. Does Microsoft have like a Forms? I don't know.
They do, yeah. So So you can just go to forms.office.com and you can go in and create a form. I don't know if I have any with this account that I'm logged in with. Not
Okay,
sure which
so pretty
one
much
that
they
will be.
both are very similar. It's just one is like apples and oranges. One is one and one is the other.
Yeah, I mean, they're two competing products, so you've
Gotcha.
got the ability to do many of the same kind of things.
So what I
Now,
like about the Microsoft Teams is it's Microsoft. And so like when we do the Google, they want us to add it to our Google Drive, which is because I use a MacBook. And so I have to have all these different drives. And it just seems like you do a lot of converting. Like for
mhm.
the calendar invites, if I do a calendar invite in Google, I want to attach a document. I have to first add the document to my drive. Is Teams the same way too?
Well, broadly speaking, it's a paradigm shift to go from Office to Google and back and forth. And the reason for that is Google's G Suite was designed from scratch to have everything online. There's no software that you install, right? So when you create a document, you're doing the document in the browser. When you're creating a spreadsheet, you're doing that in the browser. You're not using Excel on your computer. And so it's a different way of thinking. You create a document online, you save it online, you share a link to it online. Whereas Microsoft Office typically has been the reverse. You create a document locally, you create a Word doc, you create an Excel doc, a PowerPoint doc, and then you share those. But as Microsoft has sort of caught up to Google, that's when we started getting to things like SharePoint and sharing those documents
Or
online with other
OneDrive.
people,
I got to
or
tell you,
Microsoft Online.
I am not a fan of OneDrive.
So
I,
let me say we got about 7 minutes left, and I'm happy to talk about this all day. But what
yeah, I'm
maybe we
sorry.
need is
I
a
can
no, no,
apologize.
no, no. I'm not trying to cut you off, but maybe what we need to do is maybe Grace, we could set up some other sessions just that are sort of like technology gap sessions or whatever, where we talk about technology, which would be great. But I want to make sure if anybody else has any sort of Teams questions today, the ones that at least I can try to answer, we do those, and then I'm happy to go back to that topic, Angela, if you want to.
So one more question. I don't
Yeah,
need an Outlook email to access it, right? I just find the invite from Grace, and then
that should be true. Yes.
okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and like I said in the chat too, that's a great point, Angela. Brad and I went through this with my personal Yahoo, which is like was created in like 1991. So not really, but so that's a pretty outdated email, as you can imagine. And it worked. So, but like I said in the chat, if anyone has any issues accessing Teams or can't find the invite, maybe you got it from us. We started this project a year ago. Maybe you got that invite from us a year ago, didn't know what it was and ignored it. I can always send you another invite. Maybe I have the wrong email from you, so you can reach out to me directly. I looked through the participant list. I know everyone on here knows me, so you can just reach out to me directly if you can't find the invite. And I know Brad kind of said this in a roundabout way, but he's also said it to me too. If anyone needs maybe a little bit of extra help with this, Brad and I can set up a call. Maybe we'll do a follow-up meeting to this. So we can work something out like that too. But Brad, one last question I think we have time for, just really quick. Michelle Mata also asked, how can I use this with an 8-week course like peer-to-peer? Do you think that would be possible?
So I guess my initial reaction might be to refer back to the conversation we had earlier. If you're worried about sort of gatekeeping the meeting and making sure who's there and that they meet certain criteria, Zoom might be a good way to do that because you can ask those questions up front. You've got the waiting room, you can admit people. However, if it's a known group of people, you're in a community, you know that 8 people who have signed up and you do want to use Teams as a vehicle to deliver that training remotely, I don't see anything wrong with that unless people have the link. Now, I'm an outsider, I'm not a staff member, so that's not an official NAMI Texas answer. But as long as people have that link, they can join it. But the link is not going to be publicly available except to those that you share it with. So as long as it's a controlled environment, and those meetings tend to be less private anyway because they're not support groups, but you just still want to do some looking at who's in the meeting, validate that people matches your expected role, maybe, ask people politely to leave if they're not on the, expected roster or whatever. So I don't know if you have any other feedback or opinions, Grace or Becca, on that.
I don't have any feedback. I would say check with your local affiliate leaders, check with Jess just on the fidelity, but I think Brad touched on this. Definitely when it starts coming to the presentations, I don't know a whole lot about the 8-week course, but when it comes to maybe NAMI in our own voice or a presentation like that, Teams would be a very appropriate platform to use for those types of presentations. But when it comes to like, Brad said, the gatekeeping or having to do registration links, it might get a little bit tricky there. So we can chat offline, check with your affiliate leader, and then we can check with Jessica too.
And if you did choose to use Teams, hopefully you can still see my screen here. Like I'm on my calendar, you could come in here and you could create a recurring meeting and say it's going to recur, every 1 week for 7 weeks, and add a Teams link to it, and then everybody would get the invite on their calendar and have the Teams link for the next 7 weeks. So sort of the mechanics of it or the technology behind it supports that idea of a recurring meeting. It's just to consider the things that have already been mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's all the time that we have for questions and comments today. Thank you so much, Brad, for this wonderful presentation. And thanks to all of our affiliate leaders for being with us today. I know that it's lunchtime, so we really appreciate y'all's commitment to this. We hope that you're able to walk away with new information and insight that benefits your local affiliate, your members, and your community. Again, thank you so much, and thank you, Brad. I hope that you all have a great rest of your day. I'll be sending out this recording here in the next couple of days, probably early next week. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to myself or Brad. Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Great.
Brad.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.